My best friend stole my dream, so I let karma deal with him. You know, I used to believe that the most important things weren't inherited. They were built. With your own two hands and the people you chose to stand beside you. Let me tell you a story about how I learned that sometimes the person you build a kingdom with will be the one to burn it down for a better view. My name is Julian. I didn't come from a family of bakers. I escaped from one that didn't understand me. My sanctuary was the old, forgotten library on the edge of town. While other kids were at practice, I was there, devouring books on architecture and design. That's where I found the blueprints for my future, and that's where I met Ben. He was the only other kid who preferred the smell of old paper to fresh-cut grass. He was the charismatic one, the one who could talk the grumpy librarian into letting us stay past closing. I was the dreamer with my head in the clouds, sketching castles on napkins. He was the one who could figure out how to actually build them. We were an unlikely pair, but we fit. We built Atlas Designs from a shared dorm room into the most promising boutique architecture firm in the city. I poured my soul into every line, every model, every sustainable material we sourced. He built the client list. He remembered every client's spouse's name, their dog's birthday. He was my chosen family. We were brothers, forged in ambition and late-night pizza. I spent more holidays with him and his easygoing, welcoming parents than I ever did with my own rigid, disapproving ones. He was the one who convinced me to drop out of engineering and pursue pure design. We were the partners other startups pointed to and said, "That's the dream team." We'd work until 3 a.m., talking about one day designing a landmark, a building that would define a city's skyline. He believed in my vision, or so I thought. The proposal came right after we lost the bid for the Riverfront Gallery, a project that was my heart and soul. I was crushed. Ben knew that. He came to me with this merger. A giant corporate firm, Apex Structures, wanted to absorb us. He had the presentation, slick and polished. "This is our path to the skyline, Jules," he said, his voice full of that infectious certainty. "This gives us the resources. No more begging banks for loans." He played on my insecurity, on my fear of being a perpetual small-time dreamer. And I, like a fool, I signed. I didn't have an independent consultant review it. I trusted my brother. The change was immediate and sterile. The first clue was the new employee badge that called me a senior design associate. No more Atlas. Then came the Apex Design Language Handbook. My organic flowing concepts were value-engineered into bland, cost-effective glass boxes. No more direct contact with clients. All communication was filtered through a project manager who saw buildings as spreadsheets. I was an artist on an assembly line, my creativity reduced to a series of pre-approved billable components. I went to Ben, now the director of acquisitions, in a corner office on a floor we used to only dream of accessing. He was staring at a revenue chart. "We have to be pragmatic now, Julian," he said without looking up. "This is the real world. Poetry doesn't get permits." The man who'd slept on my couch for a month after his own family disowned him was now talking about corporate synergy. My chosen family had been acquired, and I was just a depreciating asset on their balance sheet. Have you ever felt the soul get engineered out of something you love? Every day, I'd look at a design and see the life, the story, stripped out of it. I'd present a concept I was passionate about, and watch a committee sand down its edges until it was harmless and anonymous. I was a ghost in a glass tower, watching the city I wanted to beautify become uglier with every project I was forced to stamp my name on. But here's where the story changes. There was an old, retired stonemason, Arthur. He'd worked on some of the last real stone facades in the city. I'd sought him out years ago for a project, just to listen to his stories. He'd heard what happened through the grapevine. He found me one day, staring at a CAD drawing of another soulless tower, and he just knew. He walked over, didn't say a word, just slid a single worn key across the table. It was for a disused, high-ceilinged loft above his old workshop. "The light is good in there," he grunted. "No contract. Just a nod, the way trust used to be." So I started the foundry. Just me, a drafting table, and the smell of old wood and possibility. I took on the small personal jobs no big firm would touch, restoring a historic storefront, designing a unique treehouse, a community garden pavilion. And word got out. My clients came to me because they wanted a piece of art they could live in, not just a structure. My waiting list grew. People didn't mind the exposed brick or the lack of a receptionist. They knew they were getting the truth. Then came the real truth. An old intern from our Atlas days, Chloe, a brilliant, ethical woman who had left Apex in disgust. She dug up the original merger documents. Ben hadn't just sold the firm. He'd signed a non-compete clause for me that was legally dubious but designed to intimidate. And my share of the buyout? My half of a decade of sweat and blueprints? It was a signing bonus for him, a pittance for me. He hadn't just secured our future. He had sold my past and present for a title and a parking spot. It wasn't just about the money anymore. He'd sold my name, my creative freedom, my right to build. He'd tried to bury me in corporate concrete. But karma, it seems, has a flawless sense of structural integrity. The cuts had to be made, and they were. Apex Structures, in its relentless cost-cutting, used substandard materials on a flagship project. The resulting scandal, leaks, cracks, a very public lawsuit, shattered their reputation. Their stock plummeted. Ben, as the face of the acquisition that had brought my unreliable artistic firm into their fold, was the perfect fall guy. He wasn't just fired, he was blacklisted. The corporate world he coveted so much spat him out, and the friends, the network he'd cultivated. They were Apex friends. When the Apex name became toxic, his phone stopped ringing. The kingdom of contacts he built turned out to have no foundation. He showed up at the foundry. The suit was gone. The charm was gone. Just a man whose entire identity had been foreclosed on. He stood in my kingdom of reclaimed wood and raw ideas, surrounded by the honest work he'd abandoned, and he tried to say he was sorry, that he'd lost everything. And I looked at him. I saw the ghost of the boy who dreamed with me in that dusty library, and I realized my revenge wasn't anger or rejection. It was my success. It was the fact that I had built something real from the ground up again, while everything he'd taken had turned to dust in his hands. I didn't offer him a job. I didn't offer him absolution. I simply said, "I know what it's like to lose everything. I'm sorry you had to learn this way." Then I turned back to my drafting table. Back to my foundry, where raw ideas are forged into something lasting. The place is called the Foundry because that's where you go to melt down the old, broken things and cast something new and strong from the pieces. He tried to sell me a prefabricated life, but I learned that the only legacy that matters is the one you build yourself, with your own two hands, from the foundation up.